Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith. On the phone, we have Dave Anderson. At the table, we have the Vic Braden chair it's a collector's item from the Vic Braden Tennis College. We have his jacket from the USTA Sports Science Committee. No one sits in the chair and no one wears the jacket. But Dave, welcome. Thanks for always helping out with the podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here tonight. Excited to talk about our topic, I think, to maybe give a few ideas to people. Looking forward to the Aussie Open men's semis tonight.
Yeah, I put in a couple of late nights, jet lag, Aussie time. Single strategy. I could lead off by saying Welby Van Horn used to say that strategy is meaningless. Vic Braden used to say, you can't win without a forehand, backhand, serve, and volley. But go ahead, give us a thought. And before I actually interrupt, my apologies, but people have asked us to go back and do some of the topics that we did when we first started out. We're well into this. We've been doing these over 5 years. The GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 286. From Dallas, will lead us off. What do you got?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. We're really, as coaches in the trenches, trying to help people not put the cart before the horse. The people are looking for a short-term fix and think that the miracle lies in some strategic plan, but the equipment isn't there to execute the plan. So I know we get banged up all the time by critics on only teaching strokes, but the ability to hit the target under pressure with the desired spin. And gosh, we're going to see some people tonight who can do that. I think that, when I think of some great quotes on it, Vic Braden, make it easy on yourself first, difficult on your opponent second. That just always resonated with me, and I try to pass that on to people.
With Braden, I wonder how many times this has been mentioned on our podcast. One of his themes, the dimensions of the court and physical laws dictate stroke production. No coach's opinion or any unique theory. Along the lines with Vic, I tell people, players and parents of players, and even coaches. Actually, last weekend I was up in Boca Raton doing a coach's workshop. If I ask people 19.1 degrees, 130 degrees, 30 degrees, 180 degrees, just to review those, if you can reach over the net, you hit 180 degrees. 3 feet from the net, approximately 130 degrees. You go back 10.5 feet from the net, approximately 30 degrees. Baseline corner, downline cross court, 19.1. So basically on the baseline, less than 20. When you go further back, even less angle. I tell people, if you don't know those numbers, like say also 78 feet, how long the tennis court is, 82.5 cross court, you just take the 78 divided half, 39, 3 steps per stride, approximately 13 steps to the net. I tell, again, people, if you don't know those numbers, it's pretty hard to have a high-level conversation with you. And it's amazing. Yeah, I ask people basic questions. I'm forever saying that in Arthur Ashe Stadium, there's 23,000 people, largest stadium in the world. And a lot of times it's a safe bet the only people who know the dimensions of the court are the court contractors.
Yeah, and it contradicts so many other sports where, whether it's football, basketball, whatever it is, I think there's a greater awareness of the environment they're playing in. I think of figure skaters. I mean, they know every inch of the room they have to go through their figure eight, to trace and go through their routine. And the same is true with basketball and the other sports that I think there's just more emphasis put on that.
Yeah, it's like the scene from the movie Hoosiers, 15 feet back, 10 feet up. So they get in the big stadium for the state final. I think it was 1953, 54. Actually, you can watch that game on YouTube, the actual game itself. But yeah, the dimensions of the court remain the same. The material of the court is definitely different. The composition of the court is a clay court, a grass court, hard court. So there's certainly some variance there. Up in Boca, I was with Brandon Flanagan. He's 4-0, so I've known him for 25 years. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you have to pick out the flaw. Someone, for example, has an open racket face on the backhand side, they're going to have to recruit the muscles to square the racket face up at the hit. And generally, it's just a safe bet to swing becomes very horizontal. So be able to recognize the weakness. We use a FedEx logo. A lot of times you say to someone, you see the arrow within that FedEx logo, and they say no, but you point it out. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. We've even taken a photocopy of that, passed it out in these coaches' workshops and say, okay, let's fill in the arrow. But to me, it's like a chessboard. It's amazing. We always have a chessboard around, and it's interesting. People from this country, that country, like they always said, all the Russians, every Russian kid played chess. But one kid plays the other kid, and it's like the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer. Do you play the board? Do you play your opponent? And the first answer is you play the board. In tennis, you have to play the court. But you see, kids make mistakes playing chess. One person has a counter move to a bad move, but they just accept it. They just accept, oh, you know more about chess. If I'm going to improve, I better go to work. But I think a lot of times in tennis, especially the teenage boys, it's like, well, I'll win next time. And pretty much next time, kids end up playing exactly the same.
Yeah, I had written down several notes as well. One of them was play the court. I mean, you've got targets that fundamentally are just going to exist no matter who's on the other side. And I think that people get so emotional. They just don't play the game the way that it's designed to be played, especially in the developmental stages. And then, another comment that you already alluded to was it's so critical. Again, it seemed to defend this a lot from a critic standpoint, but if you don't understand skill production, stroke production, it's going to be difficult to understand strategic approaches. It's kind of a side benefit, a residual effect of teaching people to teach, peer teaching, is that the more knowledge the individual gains, to go back to another famous quote, you really coach one to coach oneself. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of the sideline coaching. I think it's just become kind of a sideshow in our sports, and the strength and independence, that people have inside of them is weakened, I believe, by having to look over all the time, especially in the professional game.
Going out to the tennis court, Uncle Vic, just in the warm-up, feed a ball right up the middle, and you'll find out it's usually people sidestepping the backhand to hit a forehand. Another thing is in the very first part of the match, make the little discoveries. Just throw up a high ground stroke. And if they back up, the trajectory makes the ball bounce high. We have a tape with Agassi when he was a teenager, taping maybe Nick Bollettieri. If you just hit a high arcing ground stroke, and they back up, they let the ball bounce up high, then the very next ball you can step up and start to dictate the point. IQ versus EQ, I know that we grind people in a classroom setting. I know a lot of tennis programs, and I've been fortunate to travel and visit a lot of tennis programs, but there's not an off-court classroom chalk talk like they have, say, in football, basketball. And kids can know tactical concepts on paper, but when they play, that's the IQ versus the EQ. They pick up that racket and the Welby Van Horn, they reduce their IQ in half. It's just, I want to win, I want to win, I want to win. I was just watching a young boy today. We were working for a couple of years. He just shows so much stress. His body language is getting better, but if you look closely, the fun factor, but the EQ, the emotional quotient, the people let the scoreboard regulate their emotions. I wrote this down as well. This is a review. I plus I plus I equals I. Information, ideas, and insight equal instincts. Single strategy, double strategy. If you can go to the net and hit one deep volley, your chance to win the point just skyrocket. But if you don't go to the net, you don't go to the net.
Yeah, something you said about IQ, EQ, and to add AQ, which is kind of tied into EQ, but adversity quotient. to watch a boy do the 14-6 in the deep test today, it was really just indicative of kind of how he is capable of grinding through a match and competing. Adversity quotient is such a huge factor, how people handle it. And again, not to pick on this particular generation that we're a part of right now, but the adversity quotient's lower because we're removing the hurdles in the adversity. And whether it's done in the household or whether it's done through our systematic approach, taking third sets out of play. I think Boris Becker is the one, I believe, who said it, that the fifth set, and you get into those fifth sets, it's not even about tennis, it's about art and guts and grit. And that's not verbatim, but it was something along those lines. And the AQ, I mean, that's that one aspect I love about Alcaraz is, and we'll see if it continues through the tournament, but he can miss a shot and put a smile on his face, whether it's fake, real, it's helping him. And again, to go back to Vic Braden, laugh and win. What a beautiful concept.
Adversity quotient. How much can you take? When one of our parents years ago, he actually played in the NFL, and he said, yeah, my kids, their mom runs in front of them and throws down red rose petals. So I've coached quite a few former NFLers. But yeah, the young guy that's training, shout out to him. I usually don't mention names, but Mason Vaughn, you brought him out here recently. His dad and his granddad, they came to work with us when he was 7 or 8 years old for the first time, and we have it all on film. But he sent me a text that he got a 14-6 on the beep test. For our listeners, basically it's an endurance test. I think of it as the Roadrunner, the cartoon from years ago. Beep, 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 beep. And the intervals, it's pretty slow in the beginning. It's 20 meters back and forth. But I said BBB versus TTT. Go PG-13 on our podcast. Big brass balls versus tiny tin testicles. I mean, I can't believe the fact that people are afraid to go to the net. I mean, think about some gal doing a backflip on a balance beam. And the television commentators, I mean, we don't have Jack Kramer. We don't have Pancho Gonzalez anymore. Those two gentlemen, they would have taken some shots at the players today. I mean, the players, hats off to them, are great, but come on. It's like charting a junior tennis player. You chart 100 points and they haven't gone to the net. That's not good. Those are the instincts that are just hardwired. Tennis vocabulary, concept, foundation for thought of a concrete principle. I mean, when you go up the middle, you're not giving away angle. It's amazing how people hit short and wide. And then their opponent comes up and, they can drive the ball down the line, angle begets an angle, and the person doesn't even know that they're the one who hit the weak shot. But a system is an organized plan to be systematic. That you know what patterns are, know what combinations are, and I think we have to have kids do that through situational training. You can have people go play a set and say, okay, you don't hit 3 ground strokes per set. You just do things to make them really think outside the box. Shelton versus center comes to your mind when you think of those two playing.
Well, I mean, if I'm in Ben Shelton's box, I probably would have tried not to let the ball bounce too often. I would have played that match for win or lose. Listen, he's going to be here again in this type of position, and I would have literally just brought the baseline in behind you on every point somehow. I think it's indicative of where we are in tennis, but I just think I would have just had fun with that match, honestly. I mean, I know it's very easy to say from the sidelines, but I would have just said, hey, let's disrupt on every single point, take a chance and just go and just see what happens. And maybe even to the extreme, do it to where, it just really, really starts to put a wrinkle in somebody on the other side, at least for the next time as well.
Wow, that serve. I mean, obviously, Milan, young Shelton wanted to be a football player, quarterback. Plus, he's lefty. He does come off the serve off balance, though. He's not playing doubles. Yeah. That's part of tennis today. It reminds me of a story about Jan Tiriac with Becker. Here's a quote from Becker: "If you want abnormal results, you can't do what's normal." But Machir, the cat, the Slovakian, who was so fast, didn't have a great serve, but has great balance and very, very tough out. And Tiriac had told Becker, only let the ball bounce once. Once when you're returning and once when the ball boy gives the ball to you. In other words, go to the net. Semifinals, as the story goes, U.S. Open, Becker lost in 5, but he went out and he proved to Tiriac he could play the match, trying to prove to Tiriac he could beat him from the baseline. So it's interesting. Years ago, the wooden rackets, it'd be kids who couldn't hit ground strokes right away, they'd be at the net. Even practicing, they'd just be right up at the net. And people can't hit volleys; they never go to the net. But no, Matt Clore is in Ben Shelton's corner. He spent 2 years with him at University of Florida. And Scotty Perelman, who spent I don't know how many years with the Shelton family, because he was also at the University of Florida. I mean, the guys gets to the quarterfinals. Like Roger Federer says, hey, once you get to the quarters, that's a great tournament. And but yeah, he's dropping bombs, but to come in behind it. I mean, on this podcast, we've talked about, we're going to be told go sit in section F and have a hot dog, buy some popcorn, but I'd have him play on 13.5 feet, serve underhand, come in. It's like a kid you and I coached, Scott Stewart, with the late Dave Schneider at Texas, said, because he was a great fighter, a great runner. And he said, if he could just go to the net and poke one volley. That was, we're talking about his doubles. But in singles, Federer, he got in a little bit of trouble with the crazy media where they asked him how he thought he could do his center. And he just pondered and said, well, Dimitrov had him on the ropes at Wimbledon. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, Dimitrov had the skill set and on that surface, I don't think it would have been that big of an upset, to be honest with you. And then, I mean, tying the technical side into it, from Dimitrov having that end of it to really give better looks of things and play the game all over the court where it's going to disrupt him. And it's unfortunate because, you got to feel that little bit of inefficiency Dimitrov has had in his serve that could have been a catalyst in really the injury that took him out of that match. So, gosh, it's hard to see. It was a great match. I really like watching him in general. So I like both those guys. But I think he had the skills and the ability to do the kind of things that can disrupt play.
Well, you hear so much today about the racket and the strings. Those are definitely factors. The fact that they changed the grass at Wimbledon. But there's other factors too. One is money. There's the players are obviously making a lot of money, and if they make changes, there's a concern about dropping off the charts and making less money. And that's not just tournament prize money. That's with endorsement deals. I think it was great where Donald Dell is in his book with Andy Roddick. I believe it was, if he fell out of the top 5, his deal with Lacoste would drop way off. And Donald Dell said, I think that's something that we should renegotiate. And the story is Roddick said, hey, if I drop out of the top 5, I don't deserve the type of money they're talking about. The French company is trying to sell the alligator, the shirt with the alligator. You mentioned that line. Barry McKay, the Michigander, who he won the Italian Open, he used to use that line. He was going to serve and bring the baseline with me. Roger Federer, there should be a book quoting Roger Federer. If you go to the net, good things will happen. Coming back to Shelton, it's just like with Lendl. Lendl, he got to the finals, but he didn't listen to Tony Roach. And Tony Roach said, you're too greedy and too egotistical. He goes, you don't want to pass up on the money and you don't want to fall from that number 1 ranking. But remember, he skipped the French Open one time. He was being interviewed. He was on a golf course, and he said he's allergic to grass. That wasn't a very good answer, maybe a little sarcasm. But with Tony Roach says, you just got to play that way. If you want to win Wimbledon, you got to play that way all year. You can't just skip the French and practice for 2 weeks. Yeah, if you don't start early, it's a problem. But on the other hand, is just go. I think of not going to the net like a football player not jumping on a fumble, a hockey player not going to the corner after a puck. With
100%.
Another review, Jacobson language. Bill Jacobson, go back on, Craig O'Shaughnessy. I mean, obviously he provides a great service, but I'm trying to think of the gentleman with Will Hamilton with fuzzy yellow balls.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about directionals, and he gave a shout out to Paul Wardlaw, who certainly deserves a shout out for what he brought to the game with his thoughts on directionals. But people can just go back to Talbert's books, singles and doubles. I mean, directionals. I mean, down the line, cross court. I mean, it's something that's like it's fancy. I mean, with Jacobson, the ball's hit three ways: plus, minus, IP, and then the point ends. Plus is, let me go over that first. Plus is strong, minus is weak, IP is in play. The point ends three ways: plus is a winner, minus unforced error, minus F of forced error. And there is a time, Andy Luters, who passed away, a great guy, who was on the Braden staff. He's a very, very good player. In fact, he helped me out in Tyler, Texas. I'm training tennis teachers. I think this was before you started.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows up, and there's a Futures in town, and he wins it. He wins it. Because, a lot of people were criticizing the way I was teaching tennis. And, he came over to our lab, and he's drop hitting balls. And that happened with another kid, too, Ruben Perchek, Tyler, Texas. They had a 21 and under circuit, which they dropped here in the U.S. And there was big time college players playing that circuit. There was no money in it. There's no points. It was just a 21 under circuit. Remember Perchek? He beat a player for UCLA in the finals, and he was, he was out in our tennis camp during the day, drop hitting balls and shadow swinging. But one thing with Bill, the aggressive air margin, that's just amazing to me. And actually, Carlos Goffey, who was on our podcast as a guest. Gosh, there's so many things. He was a roommate of Carlos Goffey at Harry Hopman's tennis camp. But between the two of them, Carlos Goffey and Bill Jacobson, red light, green light, yellow light points. Your green light point, if you're ahead by 2 or more points, 30 love, 40-15, 40 love, the math is on your side to definitely do something different. On this podcast, Joel Trucker corrected me where I said, take a risk. It was great. He said, don't use that word. It's an investment. But all the way through the highest levels of play, people don't understand going forward. You can lose a bunch at the net. I mean, if you win 2 out of 3 consecutively, you win 6-0, 6-0. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it is funny, watching tennis through our lifetime, and you're trying to get somebody to go in, and they go forward, and typically today's junior that thinks they're an all-court player gets right around the service line at best. They're a service line rusher, and if they get past, I mean, they have a look on them almost of humiliation, like somebody just gave them a wedgie. But then they'll sit back 8 feet behind the baseline and, try to roast a forehand up the line and miss it into the net. And it doesn't even have the same response from the body language. I don't know what it is that, I think that there's so many things tied into it. And I do believe this generation's being robbed because of the lack of respect doubles has been given. And we're feeling the effects of it. But, I wrote down, it's funny you said risk, because I wrote down risk management. And it was always fascinating to hear Dave Severson talk about risk management. And, he was very good at assessing people. And I always encourage our kids to go back and listen to that podcast he did, the game within the game. And, he was very good at really just doing what Braden said. Keep your eyes open in the warm-ups, really, pick up on what the player does or does not do. And then he would assess his risk from that I just got a message from him, by the way. He just won the Wilson World Championship. He's now entered the 75 and over division. So God help anybody that runs into him. And he played 5 matches, lost 11 games. His message to me was, I sure love the 75 because it's his first year. Yeah, I think that the risk management, I think it's perception. People think it's risky going in, and the math just doesn't support it. The math contradicts everything that they're thinking. The logic is behind it, but the lack of training in it has just made it appear like it's a risky move.
Yeah, you say assessment, where someone, a veteran like that, goes out and assesses everything, the environment, the elements, the wind, the sun, the opponent. The first thing is to go out and just keep a lot of balls in play. Just break sweat, get rid of the butterflies. It's still a defensive game. Obviously, a few players at the very, very top. I mean, look at Sabalenka. I mean, when they're serving, they just start with offense. But most people, I mean, then you got to be able to counter, and then even turn the return counter speed with speed, and have the return as a counter attack, put you on the offense. But I remember there's just so much subjective information. It was picked up with a live mic. Patrick McEnroe, Davis Cup captain. I wrote a piece on that one time. John, to digress, Patrick McEnroe, 3 jobs. He was in charge of player development. He had the television job, commentating. He was in charge of the Davis Cup. So he was on a hard court with Roddick, who arguably at that time had the best or one of the best serves for sure. He tells him to serve volley. So Roddick serves the volleys. He goes in. I can't remember if he got past or he dumped the volley, but then he just, he started just chirping the coach. Like, that was a really good idea. And it's amazing. Bobby Riggs, airtight tennis. Not like Air Jordan, AIR, into a spelling contest here, but ERROR. Airtight. Nadal broke the code. 14 French Opens. High and heavy, spin, big targets, shot tolerance. It's said many different ways. I think Ty Tucker, Ohio State, hit the fat part of the court. The Swedes back in the day, it was in the 80s. It was pretty easy to remember the letter 8. The number 8. You just draw a circle around the court and you stay away from the corners. You play the big parts of the court. So there's obviously, you draw a circle on one side, circle on the other side. There's a corner way up at the net. So yeah, you may hit the occasional drop volley with that sharp of an angle, and then tagging the ball in the corners. But yeah, I just think to ask kids what your purpose. Peter Burwatch used to ask people all the time, "What are you trying to do?" In the rally, wait for your opponent to miss, hit short, change the direction of the ball. And if you swing right, there is no net with the ground strokes. And I always tell kids, if you take care of the swing will take care of the spin. I've heard the Aussie Joel Myers on some podcasts. I don't really know him, but just would guess that, he really can communicate with players so well. Just what you have to say is just keep it simple. It's like Braden used to say, the higher level you go, the less you have to say. You just have to pick out 2 or 3 weaknesses, but in the end, it's like you got to be able to play your game. Then what is your game? One other thing I wrote down, the kid method. I always think of Chris Everett. Kid, keep it deep. We put that rope over the distance is, you could just draw a line on the clay court, but you put skip ropes out on a hard court and have the depth game not go over the service line, but go over the back 9. The 10 and under line. That's on a lot of courts here in the States. That helps out.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, I wrote, notes in preparation for this as well. And right after the risk management, I put down know your own game. I think the advice you gave on people going out, it's better to be at 2-all and have a rhythm and have kind of thawed the ice off of your game assess a little bit more about your opponent. So often, these kids just, there's been very little tennis played in the early part of the match. And, I think back to, I love the way Matt Canole, from the former Baylor coach, when he was on, and boy, his philosophy when he would tell his players, and he was dealing with, as he said, people from, that he recruited from pretty deep in junior Grand Slams and all over the world. And he said, he just has stupid errors, and the second serve return, not getting back in play. There's, I think that so many of these errors are because people, the awareness of where they truly are, a little bit of denial, a little bit of, I see so many kids trying to emulate all speeds and do things that are just not where they are. They're not at that point in the ladder yet to climb, and you can't skip. You just can't skip steps. And what you said, the kid method, adding the second D on there, keep it deep dummy. You gotta get the ball deep, and you gotta be able to control the court, the line of scrimmage.
I told a young player yesterday, I said, there's such a thing as intermediate tactics. I said, you're not an elite player. You're an intermediate player. And juniors get confused because, well, they go back to their park, their club, and people are like, wow, well, you're so good. But as far as the ladder, the pyramid, and that's one good thing about the UTR, it's very accurate. But the same player today played a match, and he just on his own accord, he played everything to the player's forehand. He's playing against a player who had no backhand. So it's very, very good. He's just practice. He goes, I'm just going to play to his strengths. I'm not going to play to his weakness and win easy. Braden, you use the term know. The kids know their level of play, but Vic used to do this back when Jimmy Connors, Bjorn Borg were both 1 and 2 in the world. And, Jimmy had the reset swing on the forehand side. People think, say, well, Jimmy had a continental grip. He actually was past Eastern going towards semi-Western. But he had a reset, and he certainly could hit a topspin forehand. People say, he couldn't hit topspin. He says, Jimmy Connors could hit topspin, but he had a reset. It's pretty easy to remember. He, to this day, doesn't think he lost the match. He's down 5-love in the fourth, and they didn't make the call. He's playing Vilas. U.S. Open back in 77 was on clay at Forest Hills. And by the time the umpire climbed down off the chair to go check the mark, it was like a soccer crowd. Vilas's, the Argentines and the crowd had already stormed on the court like a soccer match. But Vic used to go, Jimmy knows, talking about his forehand. Jimmy knows he's weak on the forehand side. Bjorn knows Jimmy's weak on the forehand side. And then he would just go, Jimmy knows that Bjorn knows that Jimmy knows. Bjorn knows that Jimmy knows that Bjorn knows that Jimmy knows. And everybody in the stadium knows. That's not really true. I mean, there's a lot of people just watching and have no idea what's going on. But I think of Vic in our library, there's some things over the years that Vic gave me. One thing he gave me was the master copy of his single strategy. And everything that's on that, just like with his, it was for mixed doubles, but it's, help me out here, Fantastic Adventure. The name of it, it's just tip of my tongue, but it all stands the test of time. Not just for forehands and backhands, but the tactical concepts as well. There's some things. Why don't you comment on serve +1? I certainly get tired of hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. That's what I was explaining about 3:00 today. I think that here's what I explained to a young man, very good player, right around same level as Mason, who we mentioned earlier. And I mean, when these guys, they're certainly looking to take control of the point. And I think, again, everybody's looking at what the top players are doing and trying to skip steps and get there. And it's good. You want to play for the future, too, in that regard. But I was trying to explain to him, a guy like John Isner, who, when was playing and that terminology kind of came out, that jargon, and I mean, nearly 50% of his serves were unreturned, and the ones that were hanging in the middle of the court. But the way I explained it is, it could be a return +1. These people are hunting and looking for the first opportunity to take control of the point, and oftentimes when you're dealing with the serves that are being hit on TV by many of the players, it's a reality of the kind of ball that's coming back. It's certainly not a reality of, it's not going to be common language in a de Minaur's game, even though he's a top 10 player in the world. So I think it's a really misunderstood concept. And, the juniors that I think grab hold of it and try to make it happen, they're trying to pull triggers, really from inopportune times. They're almost putting themselves in more harm than good in many cases, moving way around to get a forehand and exposing the court. And it ties into, a bullet point I wrote down, and we're dealing with developmental players. I mean, everybody is developing in a sense, but winning versus developing when it comes to singles tactics. And boy, you can, you can really shoot yourself right in the foot if you're not careful as a parent or a player or a coach. Getting the results and in a way that you just look back years down the road and you realize that what you were doing was really harmful to your long-term development.
Well, one word is, complete. Is someone a complete player? John Isner, obviously, hats off to John Isner, but no one hit more aces in the history of the game than John Isner. Brian Wilson, you could call it an elevator ride with Craig Tiley when he was at Illinois. Brian was sent to me a couple of different times. At one point where he was ineligible, another time he was playing matches. But Jeremy Wurtzman, Raleigh Hart, I knew those guys when they were in the 12s. But they all three have a win over Isner. It was, I believe, every set was 7-6, 7-6. I could be wrong. I mean, Wilson, but he also had a win over Karlovic. Maybe he's not a win over Isner, but a win over Karlovic. I think it was both. But, that was back. They were playing the futures level. But Manny Diaz, who coached John at Georgia, said it on our podcast that he'd have millions more in the bank if he could hit a backhand volley. But now he has his own podcast and he makes fun of his own self-deprecating along with Query. But that's one thing that's not coming through the TV, where they're really, here in the States, they're not really talking about players' weaknesses. I mean, the players are great, but I think many times the commentators are edifying the players because they would rather coach the player than be the commentator. It's amazing how they have access to the players and how many commentators get those coaching gigs, the celebrity coach at the top. Jim Lair, when the point's over, did you play aggressive percentage tennis? So many people you go out to, say, the 12s and 14s, kids are going for the $100 shot from the 10-cent position instead of getting the $100 position to go for the 10-cent shot. And this workshop, we took 2 players with us. One is a player just turned 8, and he gets a lot of attention. He hits the ball quite well, but he plays points. Right now, he's just trying to win the point. He's the same height as the net. Think of Chuck McKinley. He jumped through the gym. And I'm telling him to look at play the approach shot, play a deep approach shot. You can play tabletop, play underspin. We're teaching topspin, all 3. And when they hit a lob, just even if it's an air ball, go back, crossover, and just jump up. Next thing you know, you can jump through the gym. How do you get better at jumping? You jump. So seriously, I mean, it's interesting when you're at a stadium and someone misses an overhead, the response from the audience, the smash, the slam, the put away. But when somebody misses a routine forehand, people are looking for the spectacular. You mentioned not missing approach shots, right? I mean, the second serve return. Well, that's coming back to Jacobson. I mean, Jacobson will also say, sometimes people don't double fault enough. They're just pushing their second serve. But I was telling a boy the other day, just hit the intermediate tactics. Just hit 2 body serves, just hit 2 spin serves, hit 2 big serves to the middle with good technique, and then go work on targets later. You want balls to come back through the middle. You want to come up and volley, and people will be rewarded if they listen. Say, no, this is not the time for you to go out and that's one of the problems with I think of the Babolat racket. Oh my word. People would be doing tennis of service if they could start manufacturing wooden rackets again and have people play with wooden rackets so they can't just tee off on the ball. Oldie goldies, the 7 concepts. On our course, Tennis Intelligence Applied, we've been using these since the 80s. So the GreatBase, Dave knows this, it really started to come together in 1981, and our 8 pillars are people that helped us with the tennis teaching program we had. But red, yellow, green, defensive, neutral, offensive, percentage post, percentage line, short ball range, GVP, IVP, the volleying position, and then hold the line. Let's go over each one. Go ahead with red, yellow, green.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great explanation of the tennis court. I think that there's just no doubt that the typical player in junior tennis is a red zone player, and if you get lucky, they're a little bit of a yellow zone player. The yellow zone, that mid section of the court, mid court area, has become a lost art. I remember having all the legends of the sport, Laver and Owen Davidson and Stockton and Tanner and all these guys here to play this event at Brookhaven, and just sitting around and listening to them. And they were talking about it over and over, how they thought the approach shot was just a lost art back then. And they saw it coming. To me, the yellow zone, the better your approach shot, the more simple the volley. And just comes down to now very few people getting through the yellow zone into the green zone. I think a little bit about Leighton Hewitt when I think of the red, yellow, green. I think he was a great volleyer. I think in his singles, he struggled a little bit in the yellow zone during periods of his life. And obviously a very accomplished volleyer, though. I think he was great in the red, great in the green. And when he got there, but I think his yellow zone play was suspect for some reason. I may be wrong in saying that, but it'd be fun to go back and
No, I know you're not wrong, because at one point he was quoted as saying that my transition game's my problem.
Yeah.
When he was 19, he won the U.S. Open playing doubles. What an amazing competitor.
Yeah, with Mirny.
You think about lobbing. Most juniors are just trying to hit a topspin lob winner. You can hit topspin lob defensively, but just to get your opponent off the net, then you can transition, get them, take the role of the spoiler. So you just let them look at the blue sky and hit the overhead. But kids they've watched too much tennis on TV. Burwash used to say that the best place to teach tennis is where people have never seen tennis on TV. Going back, brain cramp, the name of that Braden tape on doubles is Go for a Winner. That should be on the Tennis Channel once a week. Del Potro, it was a great player, the forehand with an Eastern grip. But, you think of a kid like that growing up in Argentina, growing up on the clay. I mean, a great champion, but, begin with the end in mind, the line from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. You got to be acrobatic at the net. I always say it's like looking for a rebound under the boards playing basketball, where the guard bringing the ball up the courts, that's more premeditated, but it's completely different. It's very spontaneous when you're up at the net. But red, yellow, green.
Like you said, I equals instinct. There's a lot of instinct at play around the net.
Red, yellow, green comes from Clarence Mabry's book, the John Newcomb family tennis book. I think that's a problem now that people, in general, I say most coaches are not very well read. There's been a lot written about the game, but confrontation from, it becomes that just a red zone to red zone confrontation. I was fortunate to be at the Easter Bowl one time with Vic Braden, and he said, "Well, if someone's a little better from the baseline, you just mail in your score." Because you have no options. I mean, if you're playing somebody who's a little bit better from the baseline. Vic used to, pick on Vilas. Actually, Vic worked with Vilas's coach. I've read where Vilas's health is not so good now, but I love watching Vilas play. It was so great for the game, but he was belittling how tennis is taught in America. But actually, Vic spent time in Argentina, and he worked with Vilas's coach. It goes back. People look at the connection. Vilas played the Orange Bowl. He played doubles with Jeff Austin, Tracy's brother. But now, Vilas versus Borg, that Borg was just a better Vilas. You lose to somebody 22 times in a row the same way. Vic used to say, just try something a little bit different. And he actually did during that year, 77, when he had such a great year. He really added hitting underspin, trying to keep the ball low to Connors' forehand. But yeah, different zones. Kids, typically, they don't know the zones. And it's on a clay court, for example. A lot of times it's like, well, we don't even have to sweep the courts. Nobody was in the forecourt. The only time they went up there was to pick up balls and shake hands.
Yeah.
The yellow zone varies. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? How that varies from a little kid having to be more patient, waiting for the right ball versus a big kid?
Yeah, I think at the level, you can be very effective still going forward in the yellow zone. I think that a lot of approaches to the net when you're younger are going to be prefaced with maybe a forcing shot to open up the court a little bit, kind of the weaker option to get the weakest. As somebody's physicality starts to round out and their exposure is been tested around the net, I think that you can come in on more of a true approach shot. But for a younger kid to be more patient, try to find that forcing shot from an offensive zone of the red zone, and then gain the approach shot from there.
I think this works better with 4 on a court. You have 2 players sit on the bench. They can do it themselves, but I think it's better when you just, okay, you two play a 10-point tiebreaker, and the players on the bench, they keep score for one of the players, or each signed a player. So if you're at the baseline and you lose the point, it's a -3. If you're at the baseline, you win a point, it's a +1. And then you just flip it at the net. If a kid wins a point at the net, they're a +3. If they lose a point at the net, they're a -1. Now, points really shouldn't end in the yellow zone, but they do. So now we do that with a +2, -2. And it adds up very quickly when they're just making all these -3s from the red zone. They're just missing wide. You can do a number of different things with the tally of points. But just to tell them how many times they miss wide, from the red zone. We do the thing where if you're in the next concept, defensive, neutral, offensive, if you're you really don't want to be defensive, it means you're way behind the baseline. But if you're just slightly behind the baseline, sometimes you have to back up for a manageable contact point. But if you miss wide from those 2 areas of the red zone, it's a felony. You're going to tennis jail. If you're in the offensive area and you miss wide, it's just a misdemeanor. You're at least in an offensive position trying to do something with the ball. But the first time I heard DNO, it was from Peter Burwash. And it's just a concept, it's okay. Here's the principle. If every foot you move back, you have to hit a foot higher over the net. Now we took that defensive, neutral, offensive concept. This is a review for the podcast. Raul Fonseca unfortunately passed away at an early age, but his daughter, Stacia, she used to practice with us. Now he was a minister, but he started, spending more and more time, started coaching. So it crossed over from one profession to the next. But she tied a Chris Evert record. In Florida, she won the 12s, 14s, 16s, and 18s. It's a pretty good effort. And I just put words to it, but he studied Lendl. I heard Dave Secker, coach at NC State. He was with Diana Schneider, and they're in the Players Lounge at the Australian Open. And he said, "There's Lendl." And she said, "Oh, the Lendl grid." And he said, No, but it doesn't come from Lendl. Because Fonseca, Raul had studied how he played, and if he is way behind the baseline, we divided baseline in 3 sections, to the left, A, to the right, A, right by the center mark. And then a little further out, B and B, and to the corners, C and C. So if you're in the defensive area, you hit the A. You're in the neutral area, you can hit the A, B. You get inside in the offensive area of the red zone, you can hit the A, B, and C. That's where you can, and you got to get the ball waist level. It's got to be inside the sideline. You can tag the ball up the line. It's a really good play. You do that from behind the baseline with a high contact point, it's a dumb play. How about this one? Percentage post.
Yeah. 3 feet in, 3 feet from the side, 3 feet from the baseline. Make a mark, reduce the area the opponent, has really to run you. I feel like when we, especially to people that haven't been around this information, and they feel like we're really limiting players when we put percentage posts up, and I don't think people appreciate the numbers in the game. I mean, it's an error-based game. The best players in the world, I mean, their ball just consistently bounces and travels through the baseline. Hitting the ball with depth, hitting the ball to where it keeps people in the pocket, eliminating errors. It's kind of interesting to me. Like, I love the way you word that. If you're behind the baseline, you miss wide, it's a felony. And reducing the error count from the red zone is huge. I mean, so many matches are lost from neutral and defense in the red zone. The percentage post is a way to kind of help negate that, help people get more balls in play. Many times all you need is one more ball in play. But yeah, I think that it's a great way for people to immediately begin playing better tennis. Just running it through the baseline, just running the ball through the baseline for the second down.
Yeah, you said 3 feet. We say 3.5, just trying to add 1 point. So the baseline is 27 feet wide and single. So we go 3.5, we get 7.
Yeah.
And you get a 20-foot target in the middle. Vic used to call it 4x4 corner, 16, you say 16 square feet. And then you're aiming for the first corner, the outside corner, not to the baseline, but so it is a percentage play. But if anyone had the chance to watch film or even watch Jack Kramer play, Jimmy Connors, I mean, he just played pro shots right up the percentage line. So it's a predetermined target. It's decision by decision. You're not missing wide. In junior tennis, you're not giving the kid a chance on the other side to make a bad call. Kramer learned so much from his high school geometry teacher. But you think about Jimmy when he's 15, 16, his mother took him out to California, and he spent a lot of time with two Panchos, Bobby Riggs as well. But and then Seguro, Gloria, who taught him how to hit a ball, turned his tennis over to Pancho Seguro. But the two Panchos and Bobby Riggs, I mean, they all just they were all schooled by Kramer. Welby Van Horn, it was the same age, and they were they were among the best doubles teams. Kramer and Van Horn, they're both Southern California kids, both the same age. We were asking Welby, when you played against Kramer, he hit short. What was that like? He said, you just turn and ask the ball boy what the score is. But the people just going out and practicing that, and I mean, yeah, it is a lost art, and you could never convince me that you can't go to the net because of the rackets. I mean, especially in doubles. But if you don't go, you don't go. It's brain memory. It's how you're programmed. But I used to call it the safe spot, and juniors would say, Mom, he's always telling me to play it safe. And we call it the percentage line, which is just connected to the percentage post. And that's like a light bulb moment. If people just think, okay, hitting zone, the tracking motion, if they could put all this information together, it's so simple. Path of the racket, path of the target. People don't sit around and talk tennis anymore. And young people, I think that's nice about, I think of Boston a little bit. Doesn't happen anymore, but it's set up that way. It's like a pub culture. But in Ireland and England, where three generations in the same room, that's the way it used to be in TV rooms in America. A sporting event would be on, and there would be three generations, and the youngest generation would just sit and listen. People aren't talking tennis. A lot of times, unfortunately, they're not even watching tennis. But really, with the booth, when Vic Braden was a commentator on TV, they wanted him to be funny. They wanted him to be entertaining. They didn't really want him to be informative. It was really, really sad because it becomes show business instead of the study of a sport. But that's not really true with other sports. I think with American football. Short ball range, always saying, you have to do a little bit more math. The kid needs to know the radius is half the diameter. And Vic used to always say, if a coach knows the short ball range, they know tennis. Why don't you comment on that a little bit, the short ball range?
Yeah, I mean, when people come in knowing where we consider GVP and being able to react to an opportunity on a ball and then play the approach shot to an area of the court and then get to GVP, I think I think a short ball range has a lot of branches on it, on that trunk of the tree. And I think that what's complicated even more is right now the ball that's in the short ball range for people is just, again, they may be hitting at an 8 from the back of the court, the players, relative to their game, and then they come into that area and they hit at a 9 or 10, reducing the time. So their short ball range is affected by that. To have people understand where they have to be based on where they're hitting from and hitting to is critical. And I was explaining this to a few kids the other day. Great players, they don't watch tennis well. The kids, the people, parents, anybody. When the ball leaves their racket and what they're doing after the ball leaves their racket, the coverage of the court, whether it's recovery or whether it's taking court, and then when the ball is off of the opponent's racket, how quickly they're taking court away or moving to the spot where they need to hit. And to me, all those things kind of tie into short ball range. I'm finding in recent years that reading short balls in general is just becoming a very, very poor skill for people. And again, I tie it into the lack of doubles, the lack of exposure, the lack of training, cooperative training to drill it. But yeah, short ball range is, we do a lot of cooperative drills to get people to understand where they're supposed to be, and trying to get to GVP before the opponent is getting ready to strike. When their ball basically bounces on the other side. Boy, is it hard to get people into that mode of getting into that area well, quickly, understanding the type of approach they need to hit situationally.
Recognition drills, recognition skills, reading a match. People need to play by sight and sound. Braden's was always saying if someone's bent over at the waist and their legs are crossed and the racket's low, racket's high on either side, that's where you just start running forward. Half dozen people sent this to me the other day. It was before the Australian quarterfinal. Robakina's, underneath the stadium. The coach is like 10 feet from her, tossing a forehand to her, and he's just catching it. It makes me think of drop hitting balls. Mm-hmm. We have people come out and do 5, 5, 5, 5. They drop it 5 forehands, 5 topspin backhands, 5 underspin backhands, 5 serves, all on balance. You just do that for a few minutes. One group might be leaving. It just helps you get practice organized. Some people coming in a little bit late. Maybe a parent's asking one of the coaches a question. But with underspin, this comes back to if people can't answer this, you've been coaching somebody for 5 years or more, and you ask them, what are the advantages of playing a one-handed underspin backhand? So many kids are two-handed. Well, when the ball's in flight, they could be a movement to the net. So they take speed off the shot. They get proximity, they get closer to the net. The trajectory is what keeps the ball low. And they're playing against players who sometimes have extreme grips on both sides, not just a Western grip on the forehand, but if people look at the opposite hand on a two-hander, a lot of times it's underneath Eastern. But then also you're giving your opponent, they get about 50% of their pace from your pace. Now we resort to having kids play sets that way. Serve underhand, come in, play it out. And it should be a tool that helps them build a tennis game. But there's too much emphasis on, you just got to win, and not playing patterns. Hey, you've worked on this shot all the time, but you just bail on it. You don't even think about using it with Ivan Osirets, who puts these podcasts together, bright guy, so well parented. How many matches he chartered, he filmed. And it's like no one really is. I don't want to say absolutely everyone, but I mean it's almost everybody. When they come into the net, they don't even get to the service line. When you're filming junior points, and they're not even halfway to the net. It's 39 feet to the net, and they get the service line. That's 18 with another 21 to go. But they don't know. They don't know. It's just tennis ignorance. They think they know. But yeah, the short ball range on our course, Tennis Intelligence Applied, which is almost 20 years old now. So my son Connor, I'm hanging onto a rope, and he's up at GVP, and then I just start walking from down the line going cross court. So if you are going to play cross court, it should be the same amount of steps, same distance. So you have to wait for a ball that's closer to the middle and closer to the net when you play a cross court approach shot. And it's highly effective. We have a quiz that we hand out to coaches, and it's true or false. And, a lot of times the coaches will get all 14 wrong, and we're just trying to have some fun and say, hey, because one of them is you always approach up the line, and that's not true. Why don't you say a few more things about GVP, IVP? That comes from Burwash. Back in the 70s, in Bobby Orr's hometown, Parry Sound, Ontario, if I say it correctly, Camp, a Native American name, Watatanabe. But anyway.
Yeah, I know which one. Manitou Wabi.
There you go, Manitou, yeah. Manitou Wabi. So, why don't you comment on GVP, IVP?
Yeah, I think back, I remember, my person that kind of got me into tennis, and then I was with until I moved down and met you, Steve. And so for about 10 years, but he used to always just tell me, when I finish a point, if I could step forward with my right foot and tap the net, he said, you won. And he was a big USPTR guy. He had been influenced by Vandermeer heavily, but I didn't really listen to that at the time. I mean, I did end up getting to the net a ton, but I think that tip was invaluable, because if somebody can do that, they're certainly, right around IVP. GVP, getting into that, the service box to the service line to the net, being in that 21-foot area, if you can divide it in half, get that area inside of the front 10 and a half. I always tell people just try to get to the front half of the box. And, and it's interesting how much emotion gets in the way of development, because if you can just have, practice points and people at the end, the completion, just stop for a moment. Just like when you lose your keys, you backtrack and you see, okay, where was I? I was in that room, then I was in this room. And I think if people can just stop, see where they are relative to what they were trying to accomplish, and then what caused it. Did I play the approach shot short? Did I not move through the approach shot well enough? Did I just get caught as a spectator after my approach? Whatever it was. But, getting people to close the net off properly, getting into GVP, following the direction of their approach shot, getting slightly off center on the side that the ball has landed, and being in a position to bisect the angles that could potentially come up. And I always tell people, it's nothing to be ashamed of. If you get cleanly passed and you're in a good spot, it happens all the time. I remember years ago hearing it was, I think it was in Edberg's era that, close to a third of the time the ball got by him without getting a racket on it. But 2/3 of the time you're getting a racket on it. The match is in your hands. Yeah, I use that tip that I was given, at 8, 9 years old a lot. Just tell people, hey, just reach out and tap the net, you win.
Yeah, Dave's listeners, he's speaking to you from the Brookhaven Country Club, Dallas, Texas. I'm in Ave Maria. We're helping out Ave Maria University, helping out their tennis program. Need to put a few more hours in before we can say we're on the map tennis wise. But we have a player from Brazil. I certainly misread him at first. extroverted, came across as an extroverted feeler, came across really as a ESFP, an entertainer. You can certainly misread people, but goes home for 5 weeks. It's too long a break, but that's how long the players had, 5 weeks, semester break. Give or take a day or two, but 35 days is a long time. But he's sitting on a tractor the whole time, working on a farm when he goes home. But he listened to all 31 hours or 5 courses. And he came back and he won every match. And he goes, no, there's some changes I'm not making in my strokes, but I'm playing the targets. And he knows percentage line, he knows percentage post. It's amazing. We mentioned anxiety. People don't study tennis. We put these tapes together or these videos together, and it's certainly homework. It's not, it's not something that we put together in a whim. It's historical. There's a lot of educational merit to it. The last one, Dennis Vandermeer, hold the line. A lot of times I think, we could have called that differently if you just took the ball back where it came from. Because when people say hold the line, they think up the line. But somebody hits you a shot at the net that's below the level of the net, don't try to do anything fancy. Just take the volley right back where it came from. Sampras was so good at that. And then you wait till you get a high ball before you put it away. And when you put it away, you can aim. We call it the treasure. You just draw an X right in the middle of the box. And you've already said it several times that the anxiety level is, we put the 5 targets on the court and say percentage tennis, you play inside these 5 targets. So one is the center mark right in front of the baseline. And Braden years ago, regarding single strategy, asked Billie Jean King, if you could hit every shot here, what would happen? She thought about it just for a short period of time, said you'd win every match. So then that center mark is flanked by the percentage posts. So basically 20 feet between, give or take. And then you draw X's in the service box, and so those are 2 more targets. And you just call that the treasure. X marks the spot. It's where the pirates bury the treasure. And you think, well, it might be a little bit boring, but coming back to Braden again, is that winning's not boring. And you think about other sports, people are playing the percentages. That doesn't mean that every time. It's like in football, they're going to run a flea flicker. There's going to be a little razzle dazzle play once in a while, but in every sport, it's just fundamentals. It's just basics. I mean, you look at Alcaraz, sure, he can wow the crowd, but the guy's game is just overall so basic. And it does help that he's faster than fast. It does help that he's got a smile on his face, and boy, is he a physical specimen when it comes to movement. He's not, not the biggest guy height-wise, but hold the line. Then you do drills off of that. We love to do assignment drills where, okay, you serve, you just, set their person up with a return. They play the approach, and then it's a passing shot right to them, and then they have to volley back deep. They have to play 5 shots, 5 assigned shots before they even play the point out. And then you say, okay, you got that going, but now do it all to the backhand. Serve to the backhand, return the backhand to the backhand approach to the backhand pass to the backhand volley. And then you can even say, okay, lob over the backhand side, put all those together, then you play the point out. I remember when you and Craig Tyler, the 3 of us on an interim basis, we ran a tennis team, and we were told by the athletic director, no work on, we're not to do any work on technique. And no problem. The athletic director certainly didn't know sports, but Billy Jack Doggett, rest in peace. But there's so much you can work on. And then if you don't even have to mention technique, the technique's going to get better if people have an assignment on where and how to hit the ball. Not necessarily how to hit it technically, but no, you're going to play the ball flat, play the ball with underspin, play the ball with topspin. You have to play to this target. I remember doing doubles drills. Okay, serve the backhand, where the volley has to go. First of all, where the return has to go, where the volley has to go. So the serving side, they have to make 2 shots. The returning side, they just have to make 1 shot, but it's assigned what they have to do with the ball. So it really starts out cooperative, partner. And, now I think it's just crush and rush and just blasting balls. Any comment on hold the line, though?
Well, I'm going to go around just for a moment because you mentioned something that I think is worth bringing up for parents and kids. and kids need to have their attitude in check in order for this to happen, for sure, where parents getting out, and sometimes the best service they can learn is just to clearly mark the court as you just laid it out, and just feed balls to them and have their kid hit targets and over and breathe and move and be athletic once they get to that stage where they're, in the crawl, walk, run stage of it and hitting tons of balls. And I think it was Davydenko, whose brother traveled with him. It, wasn't really a tennis expert by any means, but just pumped out grocery carts full of balls to him. You getting the reps in, but getting them into a target is so important. And I think that it's a pretty palatable or easy way for parents to stay involved throughout the kid's journey, just to get out and pump balls out to them. You don't need to be that skilled to do that. You can feed by hand, or you can just, like Vicky Clark did to Chad Clark, in a very unorthodox manner, feeding the ball into him over and over after practices. So, yeah.
Yeah, Vicky Clark, Chad Clark, he only played pro tennis for like 9 months, but he became a great tennis player. But if the mom tossing balls, I always say if you feed breadcrumbs to a pigeon, if you can feed breadcrumbs to a pigeon, you can feed balls. The six ball drill, sometimes we add a serve to it. Okay, if you get your serve in, then you get the 6 shots. You do it to a tiebreaker test, but then do it to a set. Somebody you have to get on this podcast is Dave Jordan, who the mastermind behind the ball machine Boomer. Boomer has can program to trash talk. It's got a computer. It's got video. I mean, it's an amazing tool. But
that is an incredible machine.
The tiebreaker test. Yeah, Cole Reeves and a couple others, not many. Tell the parents, coach in Arkansas does a great job. There's no reason to sign up for tournaments if you can't pass the tiebreaker test. And then that really, you've got to execute 6 shots basically to sign targets, the 4 quadrants of the court, and you got to win. So if it's just a tiebreaker test, but we can have people miss 7 forehands in a row and they lose the tiebreaker test 0-7. Braden hitting targets. That's the definition of tennis. We've touched upon it, playing doubles. I mean, I think of McEnroe and Edberg. There's so much money in it now. I know I spoke to Matt Clore. He's certainly in the corner with the Sheldons we mentioned earlier. Way back when, possibly played doubles with Austin Krajicek. But, it is true. Okay, well, you certainly could, there's a fatigue factor, now, especially the wear and tear playing on hard courts. But, yeah, I mean, my vote would have been for Ben Shelton to play doubles. And then also, look at him come off his serve. He comes off his serve. It's such amazing serve. He's off balance, but you should be able to follow that serve up to the net. And then don't play the volley as a point ender. So it's a combination of 3 shots. No, you can play 3 shots. And, it's really amazing in our sport that there's so little emphasis on the Pro Tour to prepare for Wimbledon. Everybody says they want to win Wimbledon, but they don't really prepare. And I mean, even though the grass has changed and people are playing pretty much a backcourt game, I mean, the players don't prepare for that tournament. You can't say, well, the grass court season. I mean, you have to prepare a lifetime for that tournament. And if you look at the people who've won it, it's not a fluke. It's not a fluke.
Well, no, on holding the line, it just reminds me of cooperative drills. I think, to go through cooperative drills that enhance that kind of concept, it's so important. And cooperative drills, you can call them situational training cooperative drills. I think that it's kind of gone away. It's not very sexy. It's kind of like changing the percentage post, getting the name percentage post from safety. Everything has to be kind of dressed up and seem like it's bigger and better than it is. And these little concepts are huge. We'll see them come into play numerous times throughout the course of the semifinals tonight. And, I just made a note on one thing. I gave homework, and my guess is it won't be done by anyone. Because I said, just have a court diagram and pick a player and put a dot wherever their ball lands, and do that for a set, and then get a new court for another set. And then, you could do the other player as well if you're really good at it, but just to be very accurate, putting the dots down where the balls land outside of the serving. And it just so accurately depicts all of these concepts. And, you mentioned the Swedes and the figure eight concept. And I mean, there's very few balls get to the areas that people are aiming for when they're playing their own tennis matches. We're just playing tennis matches blindly. And again, I think it just comes back to EQ, AQ, maybe a low tennis IQ, but everything just ties together. And I think that you really have to study the game. And I don't think that the game is being studied enough at any level, players, parents, coaches.
No, it's well put. Back to the fat part of the court, figure eight, middle of the court, up the middle, south the riddle, Agassi, the belly of the ship. Larry Zonka. I watched Larry Zonka play football for Syracuse University, that great fullback for the Miami Dolphins. You need to play more like a fullback. I mean, watch the best players in the world. They go up the middle so much, but people don't really see that. WWW. I ask kids all the time, what's that stand for? Weak, weaker, weakest. And as I mentioned, Vic saying sometimes, going back to Andy Luter's, is sometimes you need to hit a minus, sometimes you need to hit float slice, sometimes you need to take speed off the ball and have finesse and different gears. But, Kevin Anderson, 100 serves a day. He wasn't the best volleyer when he got to Illinois. I know little or nothing about Kevin Anderson, but he had a backboard in his backyard and his work ethic. Got to the finals, the Wimbledon finals of the U.S. Open. What a great player. But way back when, early on, like Tiley didn't stay at Illinois throughout his tenure. I think Kevin was there 3 years, but Tiley wasn't there all three. And how much time was Tiley spending with the program his last year there and that type of thing. But so close. But, what a great career to be in the finals of Wimbledon, finals of the U.S. Open. But what could have been done to have him go just that one step further? I think he's 6'10", but a work ethic. But early on, I mentioned being acrobatic at the net. Yeah, we don't do a good enough job, like say with little kid tennis. It should be mandatory to go out and play serve and volley, not play for the 2-inch trophy when kids are playing doubles. And then do drills where they have to play all over the court. I have to get this in as a review. I've said this more than 104 times for sure, but Pete Sampras' last match, he beat Agassi, came to net 104 times in one match. But Sampras didn't influence tennis. If he did, because people want to win at every level. The 10-year-old wants to win, the parent of the 10-year-old, the coach of the 10-year-old, and they don't really understand, how the champions, the legends of the game. Navratilova, Wimbledon 9 times. Andy Fitzel, he told me that he asked her in person recently, can you name 9 players that have hit that shot since she retired? 9 Wimbledon titles. The 2-bounce rule is another concept. You draw the single sidelines all the way back to the fence. And if you're in the defensive or neutral area, the second bounce of your ground stroke has to land where it would not bypass the single sideline. Now, why do people hit to the 60, 65, 9? So that's a number that, well, if I ask a junior who's 17 years old, 15 years old, what's this mean? And I've known the junior for 5 years or more, 65, 9, they just look at me with glazed eyes. It's like, oh boy. That's when you go cross court, the intersection of the single sideline and the service line. Braden used to always say less than 70 feet, 65, 9. So on our course, I had it wrong. I had 69, 5, but it's 65, 9. But the reason people do that is they see their target through the net and they think the tennis court's huge. all you have to do, some Braden trick, is that you just take someone, put them in the baseline corner. They point down the line with a racket. Say, now close your eyes. Now point cross court. And most of the time, they're pointing to the next court. So the realities of the court, the court creates an optical illusion. It's 3 feet short of being 3 times longer than it is wide. And, and again, people have horizontal swings. They don't get the racket below the ball. You don't have the downswing. You don't have the upswing. But, centering the ball is so important. Frustration tolerance level, that's really in everything. It's not just the frustration tolerance level to keep the ball in play, but young coaches, kids will get frustrated. They get bored with basic drills. And then an inexperienced young coach, they change the drill. If they think the kid's getting bored, it's like, well, okay, we have to change it. Have to change it on a whim so everybody's happy. I told some parents this past weekend in Boca, if your kid comes home and they said it was a great practice, pretty much that means it was a lousy practice. But if they come home and they're complaining maybe they're hopefully saying that was a tough practice, then they know it was very, very good.
Yeah, I think that the ultimate goal, right, is to be able to play tennis on the tennis court and to be able to handle all the situations that you're going to encounter in the red zone, be able to move up into the yellow zone and have the same familiarity, and then ultimately to be able to execute and do the same things around the green zone. And I think it just, if you look at it that way and you just try to, finish the painting, so to speak, and don't leave it unfinished. Everybody has a great painting in them, in their tennis game. We may not all be Mona Lisas, but to try to finish the painting is the fun of it. And that's why, I have so much respect for Dave Severson and what he's done through his tennis life, continuing to play and compete. And the guy is just truly, his painting isn't done yet. He's just constantly trying to get better in every single part of his game. Technically, tactically, mentally, emotionally, physically. And those zones, to me, when I think of people who can play inside the yellow zone and play inside of the green zone really well, I think of multiple sport athletes. And I think that if you're not going to be a multiple sport athlete that is going to have the time or the ability to be on teams and stuff, you still have to be a jock. You have to find ways to get out and, throw footballs and shoot baskets and go to a batting cage, hit baseballs, play on a rec soccer team, do something to diversify your athleticism. It'll just help round out your play in every zone, but in particular, the athletic ability that I think really shows up in the mid and forecourt.
I think like say basketball. I've been watching basketball games here at Ave Maria University on the men's side. I need to go watch the women. But the men, I think, are like 20-2. Anyway, I think of basketball. Can we scrimmage coach? Can we scrimmage coach? And of course, in any sport, I think if people study John Wooden and what he did with basketball, take the best blue chip kids in the country and say, okay, today we're going to teach you how to dribble. Today we're going to teach you the chest pass. I was up in Philly. I've told this story before, but is running a camp for Julian Krinsky, and Arvin Arvidan was and still is the director. So kid goes home, complains. Second day he goes home. It's a week-long camp. And the dad goes, "This sounds like my basketball coach." So as the story goes, every night he'd go back and say, this guy's just not letting us play. It's no fun. And so anyway, the dad asked if he could come the last day of the camp, but he was on the Villanova team that won the NCAAs in basketball. But he got it. I think that's one thing in people a lot of times. Do they really get it? Stats. I think that you can certainly overanalyze stats, but I think stats are how many times does a kid roll their eyes? How many times does a kid look at their mom? So there's so many things that you can, the body language, but charting. We talked about serve plus one. I think it's really sad where, some 13-year-old kid is trying to, hit a serve and they have poor mechanics and they're arching their back and they think they're hitting the kick. And then they're looking to slap a forehand and they've got a extreme grip and they're totally off balance. O'Shaughnessy with the brain game, the first 4 shots, but still you have to go out and I know you have a lot of those portable backboards. If a kid could find 25 minutes a day, and you just know most likely they're having easily that much time online, you can hit 1,000 balls against one of those backboards in 25 minutes. You can hit 40 balls in a minute. But we find that people buy those backboards and they don't use them. I think another thing, Djokovic, I mean, it's not a mystery. I mean, he's won 24 majors. He plays backhands.
Yeah.
He plays backhands where most people are running around their backhand. I think another thing to say, you're only as good, the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. What's your weakest shot? I like this single strategy. Make them rally. Then if they come to the net, make them volley. If they come to the net, make them hit an overhead. Make them play. There's very little tennis played in tennis. Why don't you comment on the Roger Federer saber?
Well, I mean, it's fun to watch, huh? It's been around a long time. Federer certainly took it extremely early, played the ball almost like a half volley, got the racket face vertical, took it on the way up, and kind of, I look at it like a slap in the face to the server. And bang, he was at the net. When I remember him doing that, and when we were in Boca, Steve, and watching Anacone, who was at the tail end of his career, with a racket strung at like 25 pounds, it seemed, doing that to Spadia in his way, really just taking the return of serve on clay and just going. So, I mean, I think that to see Tommy Paul a few times make that play, especially in the deuce court off the two-hander, I think that play is available a lot more than people use. I think it's a great tactic just to, again, use that word. You hear it a lot on TV, disrupt. It's to disrupt people. You just got to, again, understanding technique. I mean, that racket's just got to be square. It's not like it's a extremely complicated shot technically. It's quite fun to do, but it's been around people have been doing it for ages, I think.
Yeah, Joel Drucker,
in their own way.
What a great tennis mind, a great writer. He said that the saber, it's 150 years old. But back in the day when the grass was so bad, players wearing spikes the second week of Wimbledon or the U.S. Open for that matter. But with options, I think parents, what do they want for their children? Opportunities and options. Grips, just how some weights in the ready position, do they have the option? That's where it comes back to stroke production. Can you steal the ace? Where do you position yourself? How do you line yourself up from the ready position? And, you just think of looking at Connors. Jimmy Connors said his legacy was, showing the world that you could take the ball on the rise. Then Agassi's asked the same thing as well. I'd like to think I took it one step further than Jimmy, is that I proved that you take the ball on the rise and hit with topspin. Just staying in early, playing the ball at waist level. There's so many things. I do think that in the end, there's just so much emphasis on winning versus skill acquisition.
Yeah, that's what, earlier talking about when we offer advice on singles tactics, and we're trying to get people down the road in the sport. It's become very difficult to get people to do the right things when, back up the clock 5-7 years ago, I used to be able to send people down the road to a local tournament and tell them, hey, you're going on everything, or you can only hit underspin. And good players that were national level players, they were playing a very small tournament in the area, USTA tournament. But now, so much is impacted by the score of the match, not even whether they win or lose it, in regard to the algorithm and the UTR. And it's built a whole another, put a lot more hurdles in the way for us as coaches trying to get people to truly build all court games and do it in a manner where they're fearless, because I feel it certainly is a challenge. You don't run into a lot of people who just say, I'm in, I'm going full steam ahead, whatever you say. They're governed by the numbers they're seeing on the computer.
No, this goes back a long time, but back when I was in my 20s, the first 5 years, learned how to play, grinding it out. But I would play juniors before I would, now it's okay with film and obviously my age, it's been a long, long time since I played tennis, and just, play them different ways, take the role of the spoiler. That one thing that's gone away is a junior player playing a veteran, where a veteran will just, I used to call it, the mushroom, the old guy with the big floppy hat, the big belly, band on their elbow, and they've got nothing, but they can go out and they can beat the 14-year-old hotshot. I always talk about Shepard Mead. He wrote a book in the 50s, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, but then he wrote a tennis book, his first book was How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And then he wrote How to Succeed in Tennis Without Really Trying, and take the role of the spoiler, giving people shots they don't want. But now it's just one ball banger playing another ball banger. And, granted, you can't just float balls back, but, you center a ball and you hit the ball deep and play with a variety of different spins. Let's talk a little bit about Sabalenka and Robakina. Why don't you just give a couple comments on that? Obviously, this will come out after the match.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, I think the ball speed of both those girls is off the chart. I personally like Robakina's game. I think that she's pretty competent going in, and I think that she's going to have to get a little bit more of that in that match. I think her ball does bully some people around the court a little bit. It feels like the match is always on her racket, kind of like Sabalenka. But I think I'd give the nod. I know Sabalenka's putting in some work, on trying to get more confidence midcourt in, but I think Robakina's ball striking skills. I tell our young girls, watch Muhova, watch Robakina, and for the most part, they're pretty good benchmarks for how you could go about the game from a technical standpoint. Give or take one or two things here and there. I'm kind of pulling for her. I hope she pulls it out, but we'll see. I think that the emotional side is going to play a big role.
I think confidence. Sabalenka, she's so big and powerful. She's really improved. We've talked about having a newsletter. If I were just to put in the newsletter what people send me on the phone, because our network has become larger and larger, and I was sent a clip of Sabalenka's hitting a slice forehand, slice backhand up the middle on grass. She's working on things, and if people listen to her, like when she lost the U.S. Open final to Coco Gauff 2 years ago, some time ago, and she was just so self-critical about how poorly she volleyed. She's definitely getting better. Wow! It's so big and strong. But I would say Robakina has a more refined game.
Yeah,
I don't think she necessarily has the confidence to use it like she should. It's just like at a different level. Ashley Kruger, who you've worked with for so many years, and she's coming up as high as 29 in the world. Her size, she would just benefit so much if she were to go forward, and her level to Sabalenka and Robakina. She's obviously knows the players. Has she played both of those players?
She beat Robakina and she lost to Sabalenka 3-4, I believe.
Yeah. So really, the same message would go to all players. It's not picking anyone out, but those two deserve to be in the finals. But there's some great players that were very close. It's like Pegula's, sitting, 50,000 feet away, or how's it go? such from so much a high view looking down. But she if she could just get a little bit better on her serve, a little bit better from the service line in. I mean, she's so solid. But yeah, I think hats off to the players when people listen to our podcasts. I mean, everybody can get better. Everybody can get better. Then it is true. The players at the very top, they're really under a microscope. They're the most criticized players in the world because people are talking about them. How about on the men's side? Make a couple comments on that, the semis.
Well, wouldn't it be cool to see Zverev put it together? And we kind of bet some Smoothie Kings with some of the kids today. But again, I think back to one of the first times I watched him, and he was at Indian Wells playing Rafa, and he hesitated to come forward, and he ended up coming in on that and just dumped a backhand volley. And that was when the world was kind of seeing him for the first time. And I remember saying out loud to whoever was around me, if this guy can really refine that area, I think he's going to be one in the world. And here we are years later, and he hasn't really made a lot of progress in that area. I know they say he's working on it, et cetera, but I think at some point you have to just pull the Band-Aid off. And that's why when you asked about Shelton and Sinner, I mean, to me, that would have been a Band-Aid pulling moment. And it's easy to say, I'm sitting here on court 19 coaching tennis and he's in the late rounds of a Grand Slam, but I mean, he's going to be there again, and he might discover something that is going to be invaluable and maybe make him a legend in the sport. And it's like Joel Drucker said, it's not really a risk. It was probably a bigger risk to just play it straightforward like the previous matches. But yeah, I don't know that Zverev. I think that Alcaraz will just put too many balls in play and be able to do too many things to really be effective. I think Zverev plays a lot of tennis from a bad area of the red zone relative to what he could do with the ball. It's just going to give Alcaraz too much time. On the other hand, the other match, I mean, I got to say this quietly in my house because I'm in a world of Sinner lovers and I'm right there with him, but it would be very cool to see Novak, play an incredible match. And I think that what you said with, gosh, you hope that he has enough faith and instinct to really push forward, because I think he's going to have to in order to make it happen. He's at least going to have to be, really, really looking for opportunities to get inside the court in some way. But easier said than done if you haven't played that way a whole lot. It's going to be critical for him to get the early sets, obviously. But I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if I'll get to watch the second one live, but I'm going to try to watch the first one.
One thing with Zverev, he has lowered his toss, but it's taken too long. 6'6", and the way he moves. I heard Raven Clausen say that people knew when he was 13 he was going to be one of the best players in the world. His older brother, 10 years older, always been surprised that because his brother, maybe it was because his forehand wasn't so good, but his brother was very good from the service line in. He had a great run and got to, I think, the semis at Australia. But the lower toss and the net appearances, and he's been so good. I mean, top 5. Now the younger players have come up from behind, Sinner and Alcaraz. But yeah, I mean, when you're in the semis, I mean, you're a fantastic tennis player. Yeah, Alcaraz. I think that Alcaraz, a little bit less of the showman. We're always saying he should play more approach shots and drop shots. He's just so fast, though. It's like he gets to the net so fast. A lot of times he's just there. He just hits a ground stroke and he's at the net. So that's an amazing thing. But with those two playing, Zverev and Alcaraz, Zverev's got to win his service games. I mean, the scoring system is set up and a lot of time has gone by. Just like people listen to this podcast talking about somebody when they're 12 years old, is he didn't go forward enough when he was younger. And I mean, he's fantastic. A lot of money in the bank. I'm on court 19 too. And on the flip side, with Novak, the word is that he's really been working on his game. He has been. No one spends more money on their game than he has, and it's amazing the things he's done. I'd like to share the story where he hired feedback, and the reason he hired feedback is he wanted to know what Lendl was telling Murray, because feedback, Coach Lendl, with Chris Everett said to him one time in an interview, said, you're winning matches relatively easy. Why don't you go forward? Novak said one time during a trophy presentation when he won the Aussie Open, he turned to Mr. Laver and said, I know I need to come to the net more. I'm working on it. But same thing with him is that I think, it was fantastic that he won the gold medal. So his when winning that, his career is definitely complete. But I think that he's shooting for 25. But also too is that, he's a family man, but if I'm not mistaken, last year he only played 4 tournaments, 4 majors, and he got to 4 semis. So he can be with his family and train and just show up at the majors. So maybe he's going to pull the Tom Brady and play till he's 45. But even, again, back to our listeners for Novak, early on, he could have added to his game. It's like Federer, though, just the opposite. If you read with, Federer, you go back to when the grass hadn't changed. It was Nalbandian and Hewitt. I think it was 2001. Have to go with Andre Barbosa, our fact checker. That was the first year they had changed the grass at Wimbledon. Maybe it was 2002. And Nalbandian and Hewitt were in the finals, and no one served and volleyed one time. But I guess it was 2002. And 2001, was that the year that Sampras played Federer?
Mm-hmm, I think so.
And you go back and look at that match. In that match, Federer came to the net more times than he did in 5 consecutive Wimbledons. The number of times he came in, it was like kill or be killed. But as great as Federer, the legacy, the career, dear Mr. Roger Federer, sir, his own numbers indicated that he would have been much more successful if he went forward. This is on this podcast several times where it was picked up on a live mic where Uncle Tony said, we can't believe how dumb Roger's playing. Who can insult Roger Federer? But that he was running around his backhand to hit a forehand into Nadal's lefty forehand. And then Djokovic came on the scene, and he was doing the same thing in Djokovic's marvelous two-handed backhand. But then in 2017, he started using analytics. He started going forward, and he's been quoted saying his best 20 minutes of his tennis life. And then he said, I never listened to my dad. My dad was always telling me I was too chicken to hit my backhand. But there's so much to talk about when it comes down to tennis. But Dave, thanks for your time. Listeners, thanks for your time. And I hope that in covering single strategy, we shared some, as I say, golden nuggets for people's tennis treasure chest. But everybody enjoy the rest of the Australian Open here in North America. Yeah. I've had a little bit of jet lag. I'm going to watch some tennis tonight and take a power nap the next day. But everybody, thanks a lot. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks, listeners. Adios, amigos.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Another podcast in the books.